We're just 7 hours away from the beginning of the NFL draft. So let's catch everybody up on what we're hearing, what we know, and some interesting mock draft trends I have gathered over the course of 656 mock drafts since January 1st. Welcome to a draft day episode of the Real Forno Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Real Forno Show, hosted by the one and only Tyler Forness. A to Z Sports sought him out to be their Minnesota Vikings reporter and NFL analyst. And he's a proud contributor over at SKOL North's Purple Daily. Tyler is also the captivating host of The Good, The Bad, and The Hungry on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, and a founding member of Vikings First and SKOL.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a special episode of the Real Forno Show, just hours away from the beginning of the NFL draft. My name is Tyler Forness. With me, as always, you can see him in the top left corner on the YouTube channel. He is producer Dave. Dave, it's an exciting day. We've been waiting for it. We've been talking about it nonstop. It is NFL draft day. Finally. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. Happy draft day. And eat them pancakes.
Oh, eat them indeed. And give me all my picks back and gave it David Putney because I feel like it. Let me tell you, I am exhausted, I am excited, and I am ready to rock and roll because this is Christmas.
Yeah, but we don't get to open up a present until later tonight.
I know. I wish we did. And
we may have to wait till tomorrow.
I know. That's the hope. I hope we have to wait longer than pick 24. There's a lot of things that we're hearing. We'll kind of talk about that as I'm sending out my own tweet to let everybody know we are live. This is why I tell you. This is why you like and you ring the bell, because then when that bell rings, you know, hey, they're live. It's awesome. And it makes for a really good time. Dave, I'll kick it over to you to kind of start. What are your expectations for tonight as we kind of get ready for what this day will bring us?
Oh, I think the first pick's pretty much a lock. Second pick's pretty much a lock. Third pick, and then it's going to be just a wild who goes where thing. There will be some trades. I suspect the over and under is 2.5, I believe it is. I suspect it'll go over as teams jockey up and down the board. But we'll see. And then when it comes to the Vikings, it all depends on who's on the board. I think they have a couple they would like to take if they are there. But the question is, both of them could be gone, and then most likely they'd want to trade down. But you got to find a trade partner. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a little bit wild to watch.
Oh, it's going to be very wild to watch. I really don't know what the Vikings are going to do. We've talked a lot about the potential of left guard. There's a lot of steam right now for left guard, but it's not just coming from it's not just about the Minnesota Vikings. There's talk about Gray Zabel potentially going as high as like 12.
Seattle.
Hold on. The Cowboys at 12 is where it starts.
Whoa. Okay.
I don't think he gets past Seattle. The John Schneider and the Pete Carroll dynamic, you know, they were kind of in lockstep, but sometimes it just felt like Pete Carroll had more control than you might have thought as far as who the personnel were. Well, now John Schneider hired his coach, Mike McDonald. I think that they could finally go guard, and they're desperate for offensive line, and they need it. Gray Zabel fits the prototype of what Clint Kubiak wants in an interior guy with that athleticism. Paul Allen is here. It believes it's either going to be Gray Zabel or Tyler Booker. personally, you guys know that I think it's too high for both of those guys. I know Dave thinks the exact opposite. And that's the beauty of this process. It's kind of that way. Doogie, when I did the scoop session with the Score North earlier today, thinks it's going to be interior offensive line. And it's very interesting to kind of look at all that and parse it out and try to figure out, okay, all these people are saying interior offensive line, but I will say Ben Gessling, who's also very plugged in, went safety for the Vikings in his 7th-round mock draft. And he got Lewis Seen right a couple years ago. So I don't know what to make of everything. I will say I've heard Tyler Booker might go earlier than 20. So just do this. Strap in and prepare for an incredibly wild ride. Nobody really knows anything right now. And it's more so than in past years because the talent cliff is kind of at like picks 8 to 10. And then after that, it's pretty fluid. There isn't a huge difference between what you're going to get at pick 10 versus pick 30. And that's going to make things really difficult as far as projecting and trying to figure out who goes where. Because somebody that may have been mocked to the Eagles at 32 goes 11 to the 49ers. And that's just normal right now. So I find all that interesting. We have like the New York Giants are being connected heavily to Jackson Dart right now, the Ole Miss quarterback. And that would be with the trade up back into the first round to get him, which obviously could impact the Vikings. There is a lot of steam there. There's steam that the guy I thought would end up getting to the Vikings, and the Vikings would pick Walter Nolan, being gone before pick 17, maybe even as high to the 49ers. So there's a lot of interesting things being said right now behind the scenes. And all of it will impact the Vikings because it's going to impact how the draft falls. One domino can change everything, can change the trajectory of the entire draft. So
my next question is, when do you see the first run and what position will that run be in? Will it be defensive tackles, offensive, linemen?
I think it's all O-line. I think 3 are gone in the top 10, which was not going to have been the case prior. I think Kelvin Banks goes in the top 10 after really feels like people were down on him most of the cycle. So if he ends up going top 10, which I think feels not a lock, but likely at this point, then you have Will Campbell, Armand Membao, and Kelvin Banks Jr. all going top 10. And those are 3 offensive tackles. Some people, like according to Dane Brugler, he thinks he's a guard, but also said half of NFL teams believe him to be a guard at the next level. The other half tackle, because he played left tackle at Texas. So if you have those 3 offensive linemen go early, that could shift things significantly when it comes to offensive line. That could get guys going really fast because all it takes is one. And Kelvin Banks going in the top 10, okay, the guy that we want isn't there anymore. So what do? And that's where you could see guys like Gray Zabel, Tyler Booker, Josh Simmons from Ohio State, Josh Connerly Jr. from Oregon being pushed up the board. Teams like the Kansas City Chiefs, Houston Texans. I've heard the Texans are really trying to get Kelvin Banks. They're trying to move up for him.
They need help, yes.
They do.
Offensive line. Mm-hmm.
So how does all that play out? Where do I think Zabel's Seattle Seahawk? I really do. Then where does Tyler Booker go? Does he maybe go in the middle of that first round? Does he fall to 24? I don't know. Tyler Booker is an interesting guy for the Los Angeles Chargers. It really hasn't been any steam for them, but fit-wise, it's big. I'm really intrigued to see how everything kind of lays out tonight. And we don't have a great semblance of what's going to happen.
Unlike last year when we knew it was quarterback driven.
Oh, yeah. And even so, only one person predicted Michael Penix Jr. to the Falcons. And that was Jonathan Jones of CBS. The only one. Nobody had that. So that changed everything too, because a guy like Dallas Turner all of a sudden doesn't go at 8. He's available at 17. And that's where that ripple effect comes into play. So, put on your tinfoil hats and get ready for a wild ride, because this could go crazy. If the interior offensive linemen are off the board, PA thinks it's a cornerback. So that's interesting. And then there was this note from Albert Breer earlier today in his final mock draft. He ended up going Booker for the Vikings, but it was what he put in the write-up that was really interesting. They have been calling around about veteran cornerbacks, and not like a guy like Asante Samuel Jr. I'm talking that are already on teams to trade for. That's really interesting. That is a fascinating one. I'm excited.
Which may indicate if they're looking for veteran cornerbacks to trade, say if Jihad Ward drops in their lap, they can still get the corner via trade and then select Jihad Ward if, Zabel
Jihad Campbell.
gone. Jihad Campbell. Yeah. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. And just a heads up for the chat, Blake Cashman turns 29 on May 10th, so he's not 30 yet. He is a little older, but he's not 30 yet. So we don't have to worry about that quite as much.
Don't have to bring out the stroller or the walker just yet.
Nope. And I know Sean mentioned that he's pounding the table for Jihad Campbell, and look, I am too. The main reason being, don't have a good player prevent you from taking a potentially great one. That's how the Vikings end up with Randy Moss. That's how the Vikings ended up with Adrian Peterson. They didn't need wide receiver 98. They had Jake Reed and Chris Carter, who had just done back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons each. They didn't need Adrian Peterson in 2007 because Chester Taylor was one of the top 10 back and just ran for 1,200 yards. So why take a guy like Campbell? As you think he elevates the roster. And I keep going back to that quote from Kwesi Adofo-Mensah's press conference. There's two of them. He's talking about finding impactful players in this draft that are going to be impactful right away, and also finding players that you cannot get in free agency, which is why I've been steadfast. Like, I really don't think this is a guard. And I can understand there's the counter argument where, you put in a starting caliber left guard and it's an immediate improvement. See, I guess I'm just higher on Blake Brandel because of what he did next to Christian Darrisaw over those first 6 weeks. And if you get a healthy Darrisaw back, and now all of a sudden you have an improvement at center, your weakest link is still a very solid player. So how much better is a rookie left guard going to be impactful versus Blake Brandel? I see that as minimal. So that's where my mind is at. That's why I have been anti-left guard. If that guy is a stud for 10 years, like, it's a good pick. And I don't think that's arguable. But based on the tone of what Kwesi Adofo-Mensah has said, it does not click for me. Which is why I have been that way. I know for Dave, it's the opposite. He thinks the world of Gray Zabel. He'd trade me for Gray Zabel if he could. Like,
yes,
I mean,
if I guaranteed draft him for the Vikings, you bet.
Yeah, that's exactly what I love, drafting a 3rd-round prospect in round 1.
Sal, you ready to step up in the lead position on Vikings first and SKOL? I'm trading Tyler.
Man, I'm already getting fired, and it's not even the end of the NFL draft. Like, all right, well, I don't know. I was trying to think of something funny to say, and I have nothing. My brain is so wired. I'm actually going to take a nap before I head out to the Fillmore.
I would suggest it.
Where I'll be live with the Score North guys on stage talking about the NFL draft. And let me tell you, the process to get here is grueling and arduous, and it takes a lot of time. I'm often, like, the couple weeks leading up to the draft, I'm up till like midnight, 1 a.m. every night, which I'm up till late anyways, but I'm not always working. And we're here. It's exciting. It's fun. But this is where you get the payoff. I'm a big professional wrestling fan. All the biggest matches in history had builds. It's like boxing. You want to build your shows like boxing does. You want to get people invested. The more investment you have in something, the better the payoff. It's simple promotional tactics. So the Super Bowl, there's a buildup for the entire regular season, and then the playoffs. And the ultimate climax is the Super Bowl. Winner gets the Lombardi Trophy. This is what that is for me. This is what that is for all of us who do this. To see what all that hard work, trying to understand and predict this class, that's what it turns into. And then the best part is, all of a sudden a new story begins, just like in pro wrestling. Once that climax happens, then you start over and you go to the next. And that next is unknown. We have no clue what that next is going to be. And that's where there's so much excitement, Dave, coming from this. I
And there
can't
should be.
wait.
All 32 teams.
Mm-hmm.
Except for
There
maybe
is
Cleveland.
No, this is Cleveland's Super Bowl. They had a couple good years in there with Stefanski. They were this close to beating the Chiefs in the divisional round with Baker Mayfield. Man, if only they didn't trade for Deshaun Watson, they might still be in that good spot. But anyways, we're going to break down some draft trends that I found with my mock draft tracker here. If I hear anything else in between now and the end of the show, I'll gladly pass it along. I do want to go ahead, Dave.
I was about to say, there's a question I'd like to get an answer for.
Go for it.
Prior to us doing that. And looking for it. It was something to the effect of, where is it? What is the wildest move or something like that we see tonight? Not by the Vikings, just in the draft.
Trying to think.
I've got idea.
Fire away.
I'm hearing stuff that Dallas may be trying to move up for Travis Hunter.
Yeah. A lot of teams have been calling the Browns, but the Browns are asking for an astronomical amount. Every team has a price. There is a price for every player. There is a price for Patrick Mahomes. It's just so ungodly that nobody will even come close to reaching it. The one thing that people don't understand is everybody's replaceable. Everybody is. Some people are just much harder to replace than others, but nobody's irreplaceable. And if you get a good enough haul for somebody that, like, for that second overall pick, there is a price to moving out for Travis Hunter. Good friend of mine, Corey Kinnan, who's a draft expert as well. He thinks if you got 3 second-round picks to move down to like 5, he'd do it. 3 second-round picks is like 3 starters. Like, theoretically, you draft a guy in the second round, you expect that guy to be a starter. Maybe not year 1, but year 2. And with like, you get pick 5, which, hey, all of a sudden you're still getting a top 5 player, and then you get 3 starters. That's hard to pass up. Now, I think Hunter's like a generational kind of prospect. We haven't seen anybody like him or anybody close to him since 1998. Charles Woodson and Champ Bailey both played extensively on the offensive side of the football, around like 300 snaps apiece. Not a ton, but enough. Hunter played like 700 snaps of offense last year, if not more. But you play that much offense, and then they also play cornerback full time. Both of those guys are in the Hall of Fame. So it's hard to pass up on a guy like that. Hunter won the Biletnikoff Award for being the best receiver in college football, and he should have won the Thorpe Award for being the best cornerback in college football. But they decided to go with other guys at the spot, which I think they just wanted to give him one award and didn't want to give him both. That's my conspiracy theory. But I think teams are going to be calling up. I also think Dallas might be willing to move up for Ashton Genty. But I think they'll be happy. I think they'll end up with Tetterow and McMillan. My biggest hot take is the Bears go tight end. I think they go tight end.
We were talking yesterday, and there's Ryan Poles is talking about it will be crazy, and they're possibly looking to trade up. And the question is who? Everybody's talking about Genty, but we'll see. No matter what, Chicago will probably screw it up. Hey, they're the Bears.
Dub Bears. Doubles. Dub Bears, doubles. Happy fun time, right?
And the Bears still suck. Yeah.
Damn right they do.
There's a song I heard once with those lyrics.
Oh, yeah? I'm trying to remember.
Oh, I'll have to send it to you. It's famous.
Okay. Rob has a hot take. The Vikings trade pick 139 for Will Levis. I don't think they have any interest in Will Levis. If they did, they would have drafted him 2 years ago because he was right there. He was right there. And that famous quote from from Kevin O'Connell says he's known as the quarterback killer because he shoots down taking quarterbacks. I think that's the one he was talking about. Will Levis. Yeah, this is exciting. I cannot wait for tonight, but I want to get started off. Let's talk about some of these mock draft trends that I've found. I got to pull up the article. I just published it.
Asked if we're drinking already. For me, no.
No,
just
I have to drive a lot, so I'll probably have a couple of beers this afternoon, and then maybe like sipping whiskey while I'm on stage. But I got to drive home right afterwards. Nobody's driving me. So it's interesting when you're talking about how things end up manifesting when it comes to this mock draft stuff. So I do the biggest tracker, and I'm going to give them credit because they have different criteria than me for how they track it. But I just got sent a really interesting project. Somebody by the name of Scheissel Fuel, SCHIESSLFUEL. They tracked more mock drafts than me, 1,000 of them since January 15th. So I have criteria where I narrow it down a little bit, but they didn't. They used a bunch of stuff, and it's really interesting. 202 mock drafts from Nick Emmanwori, 158 of them were Malaki Starks. And there's like an interesting like breakdown of everything. So I want to give them credit. I'll end up retweeting it here so you guys can find it a little easier. But it's very interesting to kind of look at. And I'm going to use my data because I think that narrowing it down a little bit gives you a little bit of a more accurate sense. So my criteria are pretty simple. If you write for a major outlet, or if I know and respect your work, I will include your data. That's pretty simple. I don't do a lot of like little blogs. I don't do a lot of fantasy sites. I do the big boys. It's like CBS, NBC, like national publications, like papers, like the Chicago Tribune, the LA Times, ESPN, and then like people I know from companies who I have a lot of respect for. Like that's how I focus on this. That's how I end up manifesting. Okay. So when you take a look, I think what's really interesting is the breakdown of prospects. But it's also not just the number of prospects, it's the number of total players at each position. So the most players at a single position was offensive line, 11 of them. But it had the fourth most prospects at 76 selections. So safety had the second least amount of prospects sent and the most selections at 227. Only 3 players at safety. 1 linebacker for 12, 4 different wide receivers for 6 selections. One of them was Travis Hunter, and that was in January. So that obviously isn't going to happen. 8 defensive tackles for 115 selections, 8 edge rushers for 19 selections, 5 running backs for 24 selections, and 9 cornerbacks for a second place 177 selections. And when you kind of look at how all this is tracking, it makes sense. There's, cornerback is a position where the Vikings need to get youth, and they could use a high-end talent. Do they need it? No, they really don't. They don't need that high-end talent. And I think that is something that's going to be interesting to see how that ends up manifesting during the NFL draft. Do they want to have that high-end talent? Do they want to really put that as a major focus? I think the Vikings would much prefer like prioritizing another spot and leaving the cornerback spot as like, hey, we have good depth. That's how I think this is going to go. It could go completely different. And that's where I keep saying it, this is an art. We have different opinions by looking at the same data, the same words. And I find it to be really interesting how everything plays out. A couple other trends that I've found looking at my data. Defensive tackle was surging late. So I looked at over the last 4 weeks because that's going to be the closest thing to the more accurate representation of data. And defensive tackles they've been kind of rising up the board a little bit, where guys like Walter Nolan normally weren't talked about in the top 15, but they are now. From March 31st to April 20th, so the 3 weeks prior to draft week, there were only 9 selections at defensive tackle over 153 mock drafts. So about 3 for every 50. Not a high percentage. You're talking about 6%. That has spiked a lot over the last 4 days. 17 mock drafts over the final 92 had a defensive tackle. That's about 18.5%. A significant shift. What that says is 2 things. One, defensive tackles could end up going later because, as we talked about earlier, Dave, maybe there's an offensive line run, a run that we don't see right now. Maybe cornerbacks go early. A Savon Revel, a Will Johnson, maybe a Maxwell Hairston. And that pushes guys down the board. But it also shows that nobody really knows. Mock drafts from like the big people, there's very little threading between them. They're all over the board. Nobody really knows in this draft. And that's what's so fascinating. Normally, I like to use this data. Now that we're in our 3rd year, we're going to get even more. The first year I did this in full, 545 mock drafts in 23. Jordan Addison was second with 52 selections. Only one person with more was cornerback Deonte Banks, who went 1 pick later to the Giants at 62. Last year, J.J. McCarthy was the number 1 selected player for the Vikings. J.J. McCarthy had 273 out of 838 mock draft selections, and Dallas Turner was 7th with 44. So we have some predictive data, albeit a very small sample size, of this actually translating into who the Vikings end up selecting. So looking at it, the top 3 players on my board from who the Vikings selected, they're all safeties because I have Jahdae Barron as a safety. So Nick Emmanwori had 130 selections. He was first. Malaki Starks was second with 95. And Jahdae Barron was third with 61. So when you look at all that, that is 286 selections out of 656. 43.5% of all selections were in the top 3, and they were safeties. If you want to add up the other 2 selections that the Vikings had at safety, which were Xavier Watts, 43.9% of all selections were safety. If you include Jahdae Barron. That's bonkers. It's crazy. But that also shows that, hey, the industry believes the Vikings should take a safety. They believe they're going safety. Will they? Should they? I think that those are easily up for debate. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah talking about getting players that you can't get in free agency. You can get a safety in free agency. Elite safeties come on the board in free agency more often than you'd think. So that's more of a replaceable position. But the industry feels the Vikings are going to go heavy for it. Does Kwesi Adofo-Mensah agree? I find that one specifically to be the one thing that I'm going to look at. What happens? What do you think, Dave?
Well, for safety, plus safety is one of those positions where it takes little amount of time to develop. The only one faster is running back. Whereas you take a tight end and it's 3 years. So it's not as difficult to find a safety that will instantly step up. And if they wait till next year and grab a safety next year, okay, fine. If Hitman retires, good. The guy will probably be something. If we draft a safety this year, where's he? I have a hard time believing that Hitman is going to give up snaps for him. Theo Jackson, I think, will be a solid starter, and I don't see him giving up time. But obviously, if you draft a guy in round 1, you're going to start him, and Josh Metellus is, the joker. So I think it handcuffs the team if they draft a safety. And why would you do that to yourself? Mm-hmm. I think this is national media, mostly, saying the Vikings need this. PFF said they needed a safety, so we're going to talk about they needed secondary help, right?
Yeah.
And I've been hearing it all over. And when I listen to different podcasts from different teams or different draft podcasts, they're always talking about Vikings need secondary help there, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, do you follow the Vikings? It may be they may take a developmental guy that could eventually step in, but why would you take a round 1 guy that you're going to be compelled to start and then handcuff your starters? Which one do you knock down? Theo Jackson? He's earned it. He's got to starting pay. Hitman? No. Metellus? No. So to me, it doesn't make as much sense to go that route, which probably means it'll happen. But just to me, it doesn't make that much sense.
I'll actually push back a little bit on the Theo Jackson thing. The contract was less than we initially thought. He's not really getting starter money. It's fringe money.
No, so fringe starter, but
what I mean is if he ends up being a backup, it's not going to be like this disaster. So I think if they take safety, my view of it is this. They think that player is the best on the board. They think it's the best fit. And that's why we talked on Monday about my horizontal boards, because the horizontal boards are really important because it doesn't just help you when it comes to how talented players are. It helps you quantify where you're comfortable taking those players compared to other players on the board. It's an extra tool. You want a straight big board, but you also want to have the horizontal boards as Dave has put up. So if Emeka Egbuka, Mike Hill Williams, and Jihad Campbell are all on the board, and the Rams are going to move up from 26, guess what? One of those players is guaranteed to still be there, and you're comfortable still taking that guy. But if only one's on the board, then you probably aren't willing to trade down because you don't want to lose that one guy. And that's where an exercise like the horizontal board really comes into play, and why there are many different avenues to really try and stack this class to understand, okay, where do we go from here? How do we get better? And how do we maximize market value? Something I think Kwesi has been very erratic at, where I think how he understands the market has been both really good, and it's like, what are you doing? Because he has a different way of looking at it. He's looking at the NFL draft from a perspective of, okay, it's not just what the pick is worth, it's also what the player you're getting at the pick is worth, which there's merit to that, 100%. But it's also understanding what other people are viewing this at. So even if this is a good value by your terms, how is it a value by other people's terms? Because you're also having to incorporate that within the marketplace. So if I think a dozen eggs are worth $5, but the market, I can sell those eggs for $7. If somebody offers me $6, by my market view, it's a good deal. I'm making $1 more than I should. But by the world's market view, I'm losing money. And I think that gap is something Kwesi Adofo-Mensah could behoove himself to close. don't just make sure it's a good value by your terms. Make sure it's a good value by their terms as well. And that's where some of these draft day trades that he's made have been major points of contention. I think the Vikings could be in a better spot because of that. Like, figure that piece out, and I think you're going to feel way more comfortable about the job Kwesi Adofo-Mensah is doing. I think he's doing a good job. I think he should be extended tomorrow. I think that extension is coming a couple weeks after the draft. That's my read on it. We'll find out. Because remember, GM contracts go through the draft. So Kwesi's contract would expire like a year from Monday. Head coaching contracts, they expire at the end of the season. They don't expire later on.
Yeah, the hiring cycle's slightly off.
So
firing
really
cycle's
intrigued.
not, but the hiring cycle is.
All right, guys. Let's take some questions in the chat, and then we're going to get out of here. I'm going to take a much-needed nap before I have just a chaos day. Dave, I'm sure, is going to take a nap after he gets this posted. Because don't forget, we're going to be live tonight. Somewhere between 11 and 1 a.m., likely around midnight. But we're not giving you a designated time because I have to get home. I have to do something for work really quick when I get home. And then we will be going live. So you will want to have that notification bell turned on. And once that's turned on, then you'll know. And we hope you guys can all join us live. All right. Aaron asks, are you pleased with his drafts? I think you have to look at the 2022 draft in a vacuum a little bit and keep it separate. You don't want to throw it out because he still made the picks. The process he used ended up being flawed. And there were many reasons for that. And I think the reasons why it was flawed have been corrected. The processes he's put in place, the people he's put in place that he trusts. I think those factors, plus he went in there trying to fix everything at once. And then that shifted to, okay, let's fix this. And then let's fix this. I think those factors played a big role in 2022 being so unsuccessful. Plus, they just had shit luck. Lewis Cine snapping his leg in half, you're just a different human after that. You're a different human. And all the things he was good at in college, he just all of a sudden became not good at in the NFL. Which is like, okay, why? I think it's just bad luck. I think you still have to criticize him for it, but nowhere near to the degree that people criticize him for it. I do think that the growth he's shown in 23 and 24 with the process, the player selection, the evaluation, I think has been significantly improved. And I feel good about those drafts. If Mekhi Blackman becomes a starter, you hit on your first two picks. Doesn't matter what the next four do because they're all day 3. You'd like them to be hits, but you missed on Jaquan Roy. You missed on Jaron Hall. You missed on Dwayne McBride. Who cares? They're all 5th and 7th round picks. In theory, that doesn't matter that much. And then you still want them to be hits. You want everybody to be a hit. But it's okay if you miss there. If J.J. McCarthy and Dallas Turner hit, you'll have hit on 3 of your first 4 first-round picks. That is a 75% hit rate, and that's great. That is a great hit rate for a general manager. So I'd give him a B- as far as drafting so far. I think there's been real improvement, and projecting forward, I think you're going to continue to see real improvement. And that's kind of where I'm at. I think he gets way too much criticism. And I think some of that is because he's not a football guy, and it's a complete deviation from what Rick Spielman was. I also think Rick Spielman was overrated. He wasn't nearly as good as people made him out to be. I also think it's because he's an analytics forward GM, which is, he's kind of the first of this kind. And people are hard on him for that. You know, I also think there might be a part of it where, like, he's black. There are some people out there who are more critical because of race. I think you combine all 3 of those into one, and it's a cocktail for extra criticism that might not be warranted. If Rick Spielman made all those picks and trades, how would you have felt about it? Ask yourself that question. That's kind of how I view it. Like he's been a B- in the draft. Not great, but there's been some real good. All right, let's get to a couple extra questions because I could probably talk about Kwesi all day. Gaetano's Christmas channel. Do you think Matthew Golden's a possibility? I mean, I think wide receiver is a possibility. I would prefer Emeka Egbuka and Luther Burden to Matthew Golden. I don't think Golden plays like a guy who runs a 4.29 40. I think he plays like a 4.4 guy. And that's still fast, but it's not game-changing fast. And that's why when I see testing, like DJ Giddens ran a 4.43. I think he's a 4.53 guy, and I still love him. So it didn't change my opinion on him at all. Like, if they take Golden, I'll be very intrigued. But I'm more of, I think they would take Emeka Egbuka or Luther Burden. Tedero McMillan, I think, is gone by pick 12. But if they take Luther Burden, it gives them something their offense doesn't have. And if they take Emeka Egbuka, it gives them a big redundancy in a good way. He's a willing and good blocker like Cooper Kupp, who they tried to sign. And he's a route running savant like Jefferson and Addison. So you get 3 elite route runners on the field. Just imagine how good that can be. Redundancy isn't always bad. And I think in this case, it wouldn't be. All right.
I got one here. Cause and effect. Do you believe that the Vikings have their backup QB just waiting until the draft is completed? Ready to announce it? It's already been done in a handshake deal?
I don't know about that, but I do think that the backup quarterback is not on the roster right now. I think they like Brett Rippon and they want to have Brett Rippon on the roster, and they are comfortable with him, but I think they want another guy. I think it's going to be Sam Howell. That's my guess. I really do. But they're going to add somebody. I just don't see them not.
Okay.
All right. Oscar says, love that he loves all the content. Keep up the good work. Thank you, sir. I'll say everyone loves Genty as they should, but Caleb Johnson from Iowa is a really great prospect. I don't love Caleb Johnson. I think he is an interchangeable wide zone running back, and that's a good player. But I think there are better players at his position or players that I would prefer to Caleb Johnson. If they get him, I get it. But to me, he's like a discounted version of, or like he's like a Raheem Mostert, but a little bit slower. Interchangeable. You put him in there as a starter, he'll get you 1,000 yards. But is he going to be a difference maker? Probably not. Kind of akin to Jordan Mason. Like, Jordan Mason's a good player, but is he a difference maker? I don't think so. That's kind of how I see it. But I don't think he's a bad football player. I just don't love him. But if he's available like end of round 3, I'd take him. But not higher. What else do we have for questions, Dave, before we get out of here?
Nick Howard, if the Vikings stick and pick, what player would piss you off the most?
Honestly,
the long snapper?
I don't think there's anything realistic that would piss me off, but I would be very disappointed if it was Gray Zabel or Tyler Booker for the reasons I've talked about for the last couple of weeks.
And I would be ecstatic and celebrating.
I think it's less about the position and more just what I think about the player. I don't think Tyler Booker's a fit for how the Vikings want to run the football. And I don't think Gray Zabel is a first-round player. I would take him around pick 70. So to me, it would be a massive overreach. And you know what? I'll admit, I'm a little lower on Zabel than the industry, but the industry has him like around the 40th best player on consensus boards. So even by the consensus board, it would still be somewhat of a reach. So I would be disappointed with both of those guys, but I would understand it. And I would get it.
He's got a big swing on a consensus board.
Who?
Zabel. If I remember Arif talking about it. Because he could go as high as 10 and then...
Well, no, there's a difference between swing on the consensus board and swing where he'll be taken in the NFL draft. So like if he goes 10th, And that just speaks to what this class is, because a guy that is going to rank around 40th on the consensus board could go fringe top 10 because there's so much disagreement on what this class is, because there's so many samey kind of prospects. Gray Zabel's 57th on my big board. And I would feel comfortable taking him closer to pick 70 than I would in the first round. And I'm comfortable in that. I know Dave thinks the world of him, would love him at 24. But I wouldn't be mad at it. I'd just be like, man, you could have done so many things that I thought were better and more impactful for this team. So yeah, I think my favorite prospect, I would love Emeka Egbuka or Jahad Campbell. Like Emeka Egbuka, wide receiver might not be a need, but you need depth. You need players. And Egbuka can do so much of the dirty work for you that it can really elevate you to another level. So that's kind of where I sit. All right, Dave, let's do one more question and then we'll head out because I need to take a nap.
I don't see anymore.
All right, well, perfect. Well, then we'll leave it at that. Thank you guys for joining us on a special pre-draft edition of the Real Forno Show.
A nooner.
I'm not drinking. I'm drinking water out of my mug from the Turf in Fargo, North Dakota. One of my favorite bars of all time. It's so different now that it burned down in 2016 or 2017. I can't remember. And now it going there just feels so weird because it feels more modernized. No, it's supposed to be a grimy dive bar. That's the whole point. It's a campus bar. But I'm just drinking water, and I'm drinking a lot of it because it's draft day, baby. Get excited. Don't forget, live tonight, somewhere between 11 and 1, breaking down the first round. We hope to see you all there. We hope to see you all tomorrow when we go live about 15 minutes before the start of the draft, which I believe will be 5:45. And then 15 minutes before the start of day 3, about 10:45. Get excited. Get fired up. And we may even have a show tomorrow morning for you. Who knows? We're degenerates. We'll be there. And hopefully Darren is there on Sunday for 2 Old Bloggers.
Oh, he will be.
Good. And then Monday night, Real Forno Show will have
Maybe
more
Saturday
breakdowns.
too.
Ooh, look at that. 2-day Darren. Look at that. 2-day Darren. All right.
Pop in.
Yeah. And if you want to see, I may have some guests brought on too. We'll find out. If you want to pop in Purple Daily, I'll be on the live draft stream all night long, hanging out with Phil, Judd, Declan, and Doogie. Doogie and I will be on the Scoops sofa. And I'll be doing all my work from the stage and having a great time. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening all year long. Enjoy the day. And don't forget, don't pass on a great player because you have a good one. SKOL Vikings, everybody.
SKOL Vikings. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notifications. It helps us grow this community that we all love, our Minnesota Vikings. And on behalf of Tyler Forness and myself, Dave Stefano, thank you so dearly for watching The Real Forno Show. SKOL, everyone!